So we are focusing here on storage class of S3. We'll discuss what the storage class is. Let me first go to the formal definitions of it and then I'll give you my version of it. So Amazon S3 offers a range of storage classes for the object that you store. You choose a class depending on your use case, scenarios, and performance access requirement, what you want to achieve from it. When you think about class, very commonly people relate it to business class or economy class. So that is same thing here also. Obviously not exactly the same, but similar. As I would say, if you're talking about business class here, maybe you would be getting more catered service, right? You would have more legroom to seat. Maybe you will get extra luggage to carry. Maybe you will be getting deboarded first. You would be onboarded first. That kind of privileges you have when you are into storage class like first class, business class. Then there is economy. Economy would be still taking you the same time to reach to the destination, but it may not be that comfortable as your first class or business class could be. Now, decision to travel in business class or first class, I would say it depends. Multiple factors, cost, maybe the distance of the flight. If it's a long distance flight, probably you would prefer business class or first class so that you can relax a bit. If you are having a presentation next morning, it's a long flight, probably you would prefer to go business class. Otherwise, if you just want to have a short distance flight and you are traveling just for uh, maybe you want to save some money while you travel, why not go economy class? Nothing wrong about it. So it depends, purely depends on use case. Here the use case could be comfort. In other cases in S3, the use case can be different. So we'll talk about it. So keep class will give you some functionality, and then I'll give you a very basic example to relate different classes of Amazon S3. Now what you see here, these are representing different classes of Amazon S3 which is available. So one here, which one is a icon representing something called standard class. Here this one is representing something called S3 class called Glacier, and here this one will be representing your infrequent access class. So I'll talk about these classes through an example so that you can relate these concepts in real life. If you have come to London, you would know that London is divided into different transport zones. Transport zones are like this area, which is maybe you are seeing the color here. This one here is your transport zone number 1. If you see this thing here, it is 1. Then coming out 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6. That is how the transport zones are divided. Central London, where all these attractions are, like your Big Ben or maybe Buckingham Palace or maybe you are going to London Eye, these are all into Zone 1. How this is relates to AWS storage classes, S3 storage classes, let me give you an example. If I give a better map of how the storage classes looks like, sorry, your transport zone looks like, this is how the transport zone looks like. This is the central London, and then we keep on moving forward 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, depends on where you are staying. Obviously, where you stay will have a different time to reach to London. If I'm staying in zone 1, I would be easily reaching to nearby area. If I'm living into Wembley, I would have to travel a little bit. And if I'm going further, let's say I'm staying into Epping or I'm staying into Mayfair, I would be traveling much further to come into London. All right. Now, let's say you are a traveler and you are coming to London for, let's say, 10 days. And obviously, being a traveler or a visitor or let's say a tourist, you have a 10-day itinerary. And in that 10 days, you would be going to different places. Probably you would be going to central London, maybe to some cities outside of central locations, and maybe visiting other places. So maybe your itinerary is like 4 days. You would be visiting out of 10, you would be visiting central London, and remaining 6 days, you would be visiting other cities. Maybe you would be going to Reading, Oxford, Cambridge, wherever you want to. So outside of the London. Now, if you're just coming as a tourist, probably you have to book a hotel. Now you have an option to book hotel. I could say I would be booking my hotel into central London. Obviously, cost of central London hotel would be higher, But the benefit here would be that if you are traveling within that central London, then you would save on your transport cost because the charges would be much lesser for taxi or public transport would be much cheaper because you are staying in central London and for the first 4 days you are visiting central London places. So that would be a much better choice. Afterward, if you realize that I don't have to come to central London anymore, I have seen everything whatever was worth seeing, and now I want to go to other cities into England or into Scotland, that time it would be a better way if you could to maybe get a hotel somewhere like little bit of outside. If I am staying in a hotel which is outside, I would be paying less money in this case. But if you stay outside, let's say you started staying into zone 5 and now for whatever reason you have to keep on coming to central London again and again, then you would end up paying lot of money into your transport cost. So you have to find a balance whether you what is your use case. Do you have to visit central London again and again, or do you need to visit outside cities of London? So decide on that. So this is one idea where based on my requirement I am either paying more cost for storage or I am paying more cost for access, right? So depends on what your use cases is. The storage class we are going to discuss are designed with need in mind of what is your need. Do you want to store for long period or do you want to access it again and again? So what is your frequency of access? Based on that, you would be deciding on which storage class will work best for you. Right. So same example here. In central London, if you're laying in city center, you would be paying more money for hotel, less money for taxi. But if you are staying little away, it will take more time for you to reach to city center, but you would be paying less money into hotel. So it depends. Similarly, S3 has provided you storage classes. Let's see the options associated with that. These are the different storage classes which are right now available with Amazon S3. S3 standard, intelligent tiering, standard infrequent access, one zone infrequent access, glacier flexible retrieval, glacier deep archive, and glacier instant retrieval. These are different type of storage which are available to me. These storages can be chosen or these classes can be chosen based on your requirement of access. So if your access frequency is very frequent, you would be needing that data again and again, probably you should look for S3 standard. But if you feel that, hey, I won't be needing this data again and again, probably you should be looking for a glacier type of storage. Or if you want to divide it, one more classification sometimes people make is about hot data, very frequently accessed, warm data, sometime accessed, and then cold data, which may be accessed rarely kind of. So depending on these use cases, you may select different storage classes. Now, one more clarification here. The storage classes can be set on a object level if you want. So you can have one single bucket, and in that bucket you can have, let's say, 1, 2, and 3 objects. First object I may say I would keep into standard access. Second object, I may say I would keep it to one zone IA. Third object, maybe I would be keeping it into Glacier, no problem at all. They can still be part of the same bucket, but their classes can be different. If you do not specify anything, by default, the standard class is chosen for your object. Like we have uploaded some object for our website, that is by default going into standard. Now, what are the use cases for different type of storage classes? Let me go and talk about these things. I won't read everything, but I'll give you an idea that when to use which one. So first one here is a S3 standard class. This is good or designed for frequently accessed data, a data which you would be accessing more than once a month and you would be getting millisecond access. Your data would be instantly available in millisecond. Intelligent tiering requires its own discussion, so I'll talk about that into next slide. Then let me talk about something called standard infrequent access. Infrequently accessed data once a month with millisecond access. I still get my data into millisecond, but my frequency is less in this particular case. Right. Now, let me give an example that when this kind of architecture could be better. Let's say you have an open position in your company, and for that your HR has initiated request to get CVs. Lot of people have sent their CV, and HR has amended that this position has to be filled up into 30 days. Okay. When the CVs have arrived, that time HR would be working frantically, scheduling interview, calling people, scanning through the profile. So that 30 days, let's say we have 100 CVs, those CVs would be used again and again, accessed again and again. That is a good use case for a standard class because I am accessing that data frequently. Let's assume everything goes well, candidate accepts the offer, shortlisted, done, and now these resumes or CVs are not of that much use to me. What I would still want to do, I still may want to keep it. So if in future we have any requirement, we could go to this is CVs and then again recycle them to select the right candidate for ourselves. But my frequency may not be as much as I was doing for 30 days. So I may want after 30 days, I still want to retain the data, but my frequency won't be that much now. What I can do in that case, I could keep that data into standard infrequent access. Here I would be paying more money. If I'm going to standard infrequent access, I would be paying less money in that case. Now, I would say one tool is very best to see this kind of costing, but I'm not sure till the training is released that tool will be still available or not. But right now, let me show you this information here, which is AWS S3 Simple Monthly Calculator. This tool is going to be deprecated. I still like this because it's very easy to get started. Let me go ahead and quickly talk about the storage class pricing here. I can just put some numbers and then you should be able to see some data. You could do the same calculation into your S3 simple storage service tool also, this calculator, or you could get information from this page, but this one is little easier to get started with. So I'm going into Amazon S3. I'm selecting Amazon S3's North Virginia region to be getting started with. And here is my S3 standard storage request. Let's do one calculation. I say I would be needing 10,000 GB data to be stored, and on top of it, I would be having 100,000 requests for put copy paste, right? That is my request. I am skipping intelligent tiering now. I will come back to it. And then I say I would be storing the same 10,000 GB data into standard infrequent access with the same number of requests, right? And I am picking up other things, other classes here, one zone IA, Glacier, and maybe here is a Glacier select, Glacier deep archive. Let's select Glacier deep archive to store the same 10,000 GB data, and I am trying to retrieve number of requests here is this much, right? So these three categories, I am comparing two entities. One is the capacity and second is the number of requests for three categories of storage. Glacier deep archive, I have put numbers for standard infrequent access S3 standard IA, and I have put the number details for S3 standard storage request. Let's now estimate our monthly bill. So this is automatically populating the numbers coming up here. Let's go ahead and see this, right? So S3 service standard storage will cost me $230 and my request will cost me 0.50. But in case of infrequent access, my cost of storage is almost half or like 40% less than 230. But if you see, my cost of retrieval has gone up. So if I store data into S3 infrequent access, good thing, I would save money. But if the same data I keep on accessing again and again, then I would end up paying lot of retrieval cost for it. Like you have to come to central London every day and you have picked up a hotel very far. You would still save money in the hotel rent, but you would end up paying a lot of money for traveling from hotel to central London. So it depends on what your use case is. You would select what works best for you. And Glacier Deep Archive, see the cost difference. It is just charging you $9.90, not even full $10 to store 10,000 GB of data, which is huge. So why not use Glacier for everything? See this cost here. put copy request cost is just like 10 times of what we have paid here. So that would depend. Plus, Glacier Deep Archive may not give you access of data into an instant millisecond latency. That is the second thing here. So if I'm having Glacier Deep Archive, long-lived data, access less than once a year with retrieval of hours. So that will be some time you send a request to Glacier and then it will figure out a way to deliver data to you. We'll talk about Glacier in a minute. But hopefully this thing is clear that these are different storage classes and you can decide depending on use case of your data and retrieval request where would be the best type of storage class to use and where to keep your data. So decide on what works well for you. Here, one more important one is called one zone IA. If you remember, I told you that in S3, as soon as you upload or store an object, it gets 3 copies created. It has 3 copies created for itself. That automatically happens. But that copy maybe, probably, is going, let's say, into one availability zone, into second availability zone, into third availability zone. So that is giving us a better way to retrieve data. Even if AZA, AZB or AZC is down, we can still get data because at least one of my AZ would have the data available. But if I'm going to one zone IA here, that says recreatable infrequently accessed data stored into a single availability zone still can be accessed on millisecond. What is going to happen here? Like here we were using AZ, A, B and C. Probably in this case of one zone IA, we would be having our data only stored into one of the availability zone. It would still be maintaining the 3 copies. It's not like 1 copy is maintained. Still there are 3 copies of that data. That's why we say S3 is designed for 11.9 of durability because it is still keeping 3 copies of your data. But in this case, your availability would be lesser. Why? Because in previous case, if your data was stored in 3 locations, even if one of them is down, then you can still access the data. So you could access the data much long term. Sorry, you can access the data in a highly available fashion. But in case of AZA only storage, if AZA is disconnected, you may have some downtime and you may not be able to access the data. So it depends. If I have some data which I can recreate, like I have images and I have generated thumbnails of it, I may store my images, let's say, into this tier. But thumbnails I keep only into one zone IA. In case this is not accessible, I still have my source data, and from those source images, I could again recreate thumbnail of images if the need be. So any type of data which you can recreate probably would be best suited for one zone IA. We still get access into milliseconds, but it may not have the same levels of availability which a standard storage may give you, right? So hopefully this thing is clear. Now next is Glacier instant retrieval. So we'll talk about Glacier separately, and the next one here is called reduce redundancy, which is for non-critical frequently accessed data with millisecond, but we say now not recommended as S3 standard is more cost effective. So this is kind of a phased out storage that is still exists, but better not to use it. Cost wise, there is no benefit. So by default is standard, and depending on your use case, you may utilize any other storage classes if there is a need for it. So I hope this thing is clear. We have to talk a little bit more on to intelligent tiering, and then we will go to the next module. Let me talk about intelligent tiering. Now, let me give an example that why we need intelligent tiering kind of option. Let's say I have a bucket and in that I have configured rules. Rule says that as soon as the data is created, keep that data into S3 standard for 30 days and we can automate this process. And as soon as 30 days finishes, transfer this data after 30 days to maybe your standard infrequent access. Your HR worked on the resume, no longer needed, still have to be stored. So we put it into standard infrequent access, and maybe after 90 days of retrieval of storage, I may want to move it to Glacier and keep it there, and that will be kept, let's say, for 365 days. Just giving an example. So it depends on how you want to move the data. But this rule, when it is created, this rule is triggered based on the creation date of the object. When the object was created, based on this creation date, it would be moving forward or into different tier. Now this is good, but let's see an example. Let's say we have uploaded a video here into S3 standard. It was there for 30 days, nobody used it, and then it moved to standard infrequent access. So it is no longer here, which means now this video is staying into standard infrequent access, and let's say somehow this video now becomes viral. A lot of people are interested to access this video. That would mean that this will be charging me more. There will be more charges to pay because this will charge me extra when I am retrieving it very frequently. So this can be a problem for data for which we have unknown access pattern. Like people upload hundreds of videos, thousands of video every day. I don't expect all of them to be viral every time. So maybe some object may go viral, some may not. But our rule here is just based on the creation date, and it may not be best suitable for unknown access pattern data. So what we can do in that case, we want a rule which would trigger based on the access date of the object. That is what we mean by intelligent tiering. So what intelligent tiering would do, it would help me in identifying the access date, means automatically system would do it for me, and based on access date, if data is being accessed frequently, it would be kept into your hot tiers. If it is not being used, then it will go into warm tier. If again for longer length of time not used, it would then go into your cold tier. So based on access date, my data would be moved from one tier to another tier. That is what we mean by S3 intelligent tiering. Let me show this here into slide. So it optimizes cost by moving object between four access tier when access pattern changes. So my object would be monitored, the access pattern would be monitored when that object was accessed, how many time it was accessed, and based on that my data would be moved to frequent access tier. If it is there, object uploaded will come here, automatically stored in infrequent access tier. If that object is not accessed in 30 days, it would go into infrequent access tier, object not accessed for 30 consecutive days. And if my data is not accessed for even 90 days, it can go to archive access tier, and even after 180 days nobody has used it, it would go into deep archive access tier. This is purely based on access date, not based on creation date. So what would happen now? I could go ahead and say now if my data access happens, what would happen if my data was in infrequent or archived tier? Now, anytime an object is accessed, S3 intelligent tiering moves the object back to the frequent access tier. So come what may, wherever your object was, if it suddenly becomes something which people are looking for, then it would be placed into your frequent access tier, whether it was residing in infrequent or archive or deep archive, it doesn't matter. It would automatically move to your frequent access tier. That would make your life much easier, and it will intelligently do cost optimization for you. You don't have to manually create any configuration, just keep that data into S3 intelligent tier, and it would automatically monitor it and will move it to different tier depending on how much is the excess happened or not, did not happen. Based on that, this data would be moved into different tier. So this is a nice type of mechanism for unknown access pattern data. If you know your access pattern, then probably you should create rules for it, and those rules are called S3 life cycle policy. So I'll talk about lifecycle policies in a minute, but best would be we go to console and see how this service actually looks like into console. So I'm going into AWS console, signing in, and I'll try to upload an object, and that time I can decide which storage class it would belong to, or afterward also I could transition it from one storage class to another class. Shouldn't be a problem at all. So I'm going to the bucket which I had here. In this, I would try to upload a object. It could be any object, doesn't matter. I would go ahead and say I want to add some files. Let's say same object, object1.txt. Here, last time I didn't spend any info or didn't change anything, and that's why it by default went into standard. See this. So here is a more detailed information. Standard frequently accessed with millisecond. It is stored into 3 availability zones or higher than that. One zone only in one, and that all information is there. So if I want to move this object to any of the other tier, I could just select, hey, you would go into standard infrequent access, and then I would say upload, and now my object is being uploaded into S3 standard infrequent access. I should be able to get that information here. If I'm looking at this, see this, all these objects are in standard, but only object1.txt is into standard infrequent access. So within same bucket, you may have different type of tier based storage. Shouldn't be a problem at all. So you decide what works well for you based on the configuration. You based on your application requirement, you could move your object from one tier to another tier. And here if you see, here is again my option. I could further, I feel now this object has to be changed to somewhere else. I could edit its storage class and again select where it would be moved. Let's say I want to move it back to standard, and then I could save changes and it would be now stored into standard class, right? So this is very easy, and we will see a way to automate it into the next section. So we'll discuss what is lifecycle policy. So stay tuned. I'll talk to you into the next section.